Running around like crazy, following me.
It's better, it's always better in person.
Got my green.
Looks like that, you might not know, the Golden Movie Store and the horse show.
Really?
She had her hair. And she was in the old Western. Yeah.
I'm trying to get my computer behind me. It's taking forever. Yeah.
We have Carolyn, Dave.
I just want to research here, maybe the volume muted, so there's no.
I muted
Okay.
there.
And the volume all the way. Okay, thank you.
Screen is off, and I'm not turning on. I should be okay. I just wanted to see who's online.
Oh, Steve. Steve, listen one, Steve.
Good morning, everybody. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I see some of you in your festive green. Good morning, Mayor Flynn. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Will you take a roll call for us, please, Emily?
Director Bradley?
Here.
Director Brems?
Here.
Director Daly?
Here.
Director Flynn? Here. Director Keebley?
Here.
Director Litvack? Here. Director Olson?
Present.
Director Peterson?
Here.
Director Prokopis? 10 minutes late.
Okay.
Director Silvestrini?
Here.
Director Stevenson?
Here.
All right, do we have anyone here for public comment?
I have a comment.
Please.
Okay, so
Silvestrini.
on a personal note, I'm just going to say that happy St. Patrick's Day, and this happens to actually be the 40th anniversary of the day that I met my lovely wife. So I'm happy about that. I'm also really pleased to announce and also to invite anybody who's interested to attend at 4 o'clock this afternoon the groundbreaking of Mill Creek's new City Hall building. And that will be at Mill Creek Common, and if anybody wants to attend, it's either off of 13th East, across the street from Harmon's, at a street that's called Chambers Avenue, and there, if you pull in there, there's parking. Anyway, we are really pleased about this project because not only will it be community space, a public market, and a big community room for our community to enjoy, but our city offices will be there, as will the Mill Creek precinct of the nearby police department. So we're building a police headquarters, and that has been a really interesting project. And I learned a lot about things, and some of the stuff I think if you told anybody about it, we have to tell you, but it's actually a really exciting project, and I'm really happy that it reflects a continuing partnership between our city and this agency.
Wonderful. Seeing the renderings of the development it's going to be beautiful. Congratulations.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to have, it will have the largest outdoor climbing wall in Utah on the outside of the building, right next to the largest outdoor skating facility in the city.
and I think ice and roller, if I'm not mistaken.
Roller in the summer, skating in the winter, and a splash pad for kids in the summer too.
Very exciting. Very exciting. Thank you. Anyone else? Public comment?
Yeah, none of our clocks worked on the door today. Can you fix that?
I can.
Was it just mine? I thought it was just mine, so there's
I don't think mine worked.
we will get it there.
All right.
So ours
Yes,
didn't
Sheriff will
work,
fix
and then as soon as I called, chief, then of course it worked, right? So I had this funny noise.
Well, I switched purses and can't find mine, so I think we're in. I walked around as well. All right. Any other public comment, Jim? All right. Harmony, do we have anyone online? Just checking. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So we will turn to agenda item number 3, Sheriff Rivera, for your UPD update.
Yes, I just have a couple of things that I wanted to go over real quick. Our 101 is on Monday, so if you haven't got with Harmony on who is coming from, who you're bringing with you, and if you're going to be there, because we are planning lunch, and it's really hard to know how much to order, and we want to make sure everybody has a meal that will be here. We're going to do it a little bit different this time around. So for the first time, we're actually going to have my communications director do the presentation. We found in the previous ones were cops. We're telling you from a cop's point of view. This is going to be her presenting, and we're all going to be in the room to answer any questions. But we thought maybe that would help with a better understanding. So we're going to try it. If it doesn't work, the next time we do 101, we'll switch it back. And then we'll have Lisa also available to answer on the budget, and Harry for legal, and we'll bring other chiefs in to answer any questions. And then after the 101s are done, as we progress through our budget, we will be meeting on a one-on-one. That's confusing, isn't it? A one-on-one with each of you, and you can bring anyone you would like as well, so we can go over the individual budgets, and you'll have a better understanding there of how that is moving forward. So we're moving pretty quick on our budget. We're happy that, we're going to have it done early again, and we know that for you guys appreciate that, and we're just working hard to get that done. That's where we're going. Does anybody have any questions on our 101 or the other? Okay. And then I don't have a formal announcement yet because I'm not allowed to give it, but we do have a UPD officer who's going to be recognized on a national level today, but we're not supposed to talk about it until they actually do their press release and do the announcement. So as soon as that is done, we will put that out, but, we're always proud of our officers from UPD, and this is just another reason why. But we'll get it out as soon as we can, with feds, you can't say anything yet, but we will. I just didn't want you to see it right after and you say, well, gosh, the sheriff could have said something, but it's kind of been sworn to secrecy for now.
Can you say what agency's recognizing it?
I can't.
Not even that.
Yeah, it's a top secret.
Gotcha.
Thing, so, but yeah, that would blow it wide open. But we're very proud. So.
Great. Well, we'll be excited to hear more this afternoon, hopefully.
And and then if there's any questions you have for me, I'm here to answer them. Quick update.
Thank you, Sharon.
I'm here on the next one too.
Great. So we'll go to potential purchases, item number 4.
Chair and board, we actually brought these items a few months back to the board to have a discussion related to ARPA funding and the possibility of funding a few of these projects that we had vetted out that we felt would likely qualify for funding, and those being the mental health wellness program, a mobile command center, and a crossing guard incentive program. And as I recall, we have those.
Have it in the packet.
Yeah, it was in the packet. And so, as I recall from the discussion, really a lot of the discussion actually turned toward the second proposal, which was the mobile command center, and a discussion as to why it's not part of the fleet program, and each entity isn't paying over, you know, a 10-year period, a small portion each year to be able to replace that in a replacement fund. So there, put it on hold for a month or two and came back, and Chief Mazarin examined that pretty well and actually had a discussion with the board about that. There really wasn't any direction to move on that particular spot, so we wanted to come back and have a discussion about these items. We do feel that they're really worthy of consideration. They're things that are very much in need for mental health, wellness, and our command posts, and watching out for those who are crossing our kids across the street. We wouldn't bring them to you if we didn't find them to be meaningful. And really the hitch on these is, as we've had discussions in board meetings and as we've had offline discussions with some of the board members, there are varying opinions as to how to pay for them, and varying opinions. There are some folks who would love to be able to lean into the ARPA wind and to be able to provide funding that way, that they may have that opportunity in their municipality or city, and we've had feedback that there are others that are using that for other purposes, which we understand. And so we wanted to come to you today and really ask where the light is and where we should be pushing towards that. If these are valid things that you would like us to pursue, it doesn't necessarily mean that it all has to be ARPA funded from every single entity, because that really wouldn't be a decision that the UPD would dictate. It would be up to each individual member. And if you look at for instance, on the first one, the mental health wellness program, if you look at the breakdown on the back, this was something we wanted to make sure you had a good awareness of, is what it would cost for that $50,000 program, which would go towards training and therapy for our officers and those around them to help them. If you actually look at the cost breakdown, you can see each member and according to the sharing formula and percentage, what that cost breakdown would be for each one. Pretty simple and straightforward. The reason why we supplied it that way is so that you could see, hey, if you wanted to pay for it in some different kind of assessment, you could do that. You want to pay for it ARPA funds, you could do that. We also are ready and willing to do whatever we can to help to get this equipment and to provide whatever justification, and we've got a lot of it here, specifically on the command post. There's some of it here, but you know, for ARPA funding justification, we would assume that if that's the route that your entity would like to go, being that you're the receiving entity of the funds, and if one day you would have to explain that to the federal government where those funds went, we would like to work with you and get you all the information that you need. But we're just wondering who might need to be worked with, and even if we need to start going down that road and getting Harry and his legal expertise involved and making sure that these things qualify and crossing the T's, dotting the I's, and working with you along those lines. So that's really where we're at. We wanted to bring that for a discussion to you.
Yes, and we just need direction. We've talked about when ARPA first, there was funding coming out. We were directed by the board to put together lists, and these guys have been spending a lot of time putting together lists, getting information. But if there is not, if we're not going down that road, I don't want them to have to do that any longer. But we need to know what is the direction of the board for us, so we can continue if that is the direction.
I have some questions about that. I think it's a good idea. And it says $50,000 per year. Is this a 1-year ask? The ARPA funds don't go on forever, so how long is it funded? And the second question is, how does this program work? What is your proposal?
Yeah, this is a one-year ask, and really the program works similar to the program that we're running now. It's a continuation of the program that we're using for our officer wellness program. We currently have a federal grant. We're continuing to seek other federal funds to try to continue to bolster that program. This would be to ensure that it continues to stay in place as robust as it is right now as federal funds dry up on that particular program.
Programs like this, sometimes they suffer because the people who need the help the most are the most and get into the program. How do you evaluate who's able to use this program? How do you nudge people into the program that need help?
Well, we have an extremely talented peer support team here at the Unified Police Department. I'll just throw down that they're the best around. You're not going to find a better peer support team that is working, and as the name says, they're working with their peers. And this group that has representation in every portion of our organization they're really tasked with keeping their finger on the pulse of how people are doing, and they're well trained in specifically, and some of this money for training is to be able to continue to train that peer support team to be able to.
What is the budget of the existing program?
I'm sorry, what's
What
that?
is the budget of the existing program?
I don't know the exact budget of the existing program.
We received a $100,000 grant 2 years ago, and the grant is going to be running out. We currently have our officers at a new training for wellness that is going on right now in Georgia, so they can bring back more information. We also are writing a new grant that funds just came through, but we don't know if we'll get approved because we already got a $100,000 grant. But that grant runs out. One of the things that we've done is we're changing the stigma that if you ask for help as an officer, it doesn't mean you're weak. And we are truly changing that in this department, and officers are asking for help. There are many that, go on critical incidences or are suffering from, years of seeing certain things, and they are reaching out. And so with this grant, we have been able to serve any of our officers that have asked, or if we see someone who we feel this would be a good program, we approach them.
Does this fund a psychologist or a psychiatrist?
We do have a group of psychologists that, Brittany, help me with the name, City Center? Yes. City Center. There's several of them. They're all trained on helping law enforcement specific. Because prior to that, we were going to what the department offered for therapy, and we found that they were not trained for law enforcement specific. So it was really difficult, and officers didn't want to participate. But now that they're going to these therapists who have experience with law enforcement, programs working very well. Yes.
So, this is a bill that I admit that I didn't follow as closely as maybe I would have otherwise, because I understood that the impact to UPD it actually would be marginal bit because of mental health programs that already existed. But there's state legislation that I believe that requires law enforcement agencies to provide mental health. And my question really is to confirm: are we already compliant with that? Would this help us? What's the landscape about that?
So we are complying right now because of the program that we have in place. But once that grant runs out, then we would not have the funds to continue with the program. That would be the challenge of complying. And also, it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jake, it was $5 million, but that is for all law enforcement in the state of Utah and their families. So $5 million isn't going to go anywhere to help unless we can get that funding, more funding next year and the year after. So
yeah. So I guess my point on this may be that we would have the opportunity for at least through 2026 to expand ARPA funds programs, assuming all of us may want just a backstop on that with respect to the agreement we had with the federal government. But this is an opportunity to use that money now and establish the program. We may be required to fund something like that. It's going to require it. Apart from the fact that it's also a really good idea. And this is one of the areas where I think that our departments across the state, across the country, haven't adequately addressed. And I'm really glad to know that the culture is changing so that we're more comfortable getting out, because the cost to us otherwise in terms of suicides and just, is not, definitely something that needs to be addressed. And I'll just say that in terms of my Mill Creek, we're in support of all three of these programs. I know that the mobile command center is critical. If any of you have ever had an extended incident like we had last summer? I think it's kind of, but that facility is critical to manage an incident like that. And then we don't do enough for our crossing guards. Those people are heroes. They go out and make sure that our kids are safe walking to school. I really think that 100 hours is really anything, but at least I think most of them would appreciate it, just because I know from my experience, when we even just have a lunch for their services, crossing guards, they're thrilled. So recognizing people that give that of themselves as volunteers is.
I'll just add that I too support all three of these. I think the mobile command post is essentially a one-time thing. Those things tend to last 20 years probably. I'm concerned that $50,000 towards mental health isn't enough. 30 some odd officers in Magna, that's about $150 a person. And not everybody needs that, but more than that, I'm sure. So it's $71,000 to Magna, and what it was intended for.
I think I'm going to speak up just because I'm only going to come at it from the county perspective, because we have an interesting process as it relates to budget. We have our standard budget process, our mid-year budget opening, and then in the fall, the council decided we were going to move forward and extend and do our ARPA process sort of uniquely and separately. And we're evaluating only large ticket items for direct ARPA spending based on the arduous requirements of reporting as it relates to ARPA. My sense of these, at least my sense specifically of the mental health one, is perhaps this should be just built into the basic standard budget proposals that we're going into that process right now, as something that we should be funding ongoing moving forward, and allow all of the members to determine if ARPA is the appropriate eligibility, if they choose to use their ARPA dollars from an eligibility standpoint for that. I think when the budget request comes through, we can highlight which we've evaluated and believe are ARPA eligible, so that the municipalities and the county have that information going into the process, but let us as our individual agencies determine which funds are appropriate to fund these initiatives. The mobile command center as a one-time might be received better as an ARPA request, at least on the county side from the input that we're receiving, and could be just a one-time budgetary ask that comes, and again, marking it as a potential ARPA eligible and letting the agency decide the best source of funds for those. And then I just had a question on the crossing guard, even though it doesn't affect Salt Lake County. We're not one of the funders because we don't have crossing guards. But is that meant to be a one-time ask, or are you looking to have that be an annual incentive for a number of years?
One time.
One time as well.
I think it's a great idea to budget in and highlight them that are eligible. I know that the regulations have changed again, and there are some other things we're looking at, the Mill Creek's looking at, that could relate to UPD, and we view that kind of like as if we can cover dollars for that, if we use general fund dollars for have something else that we would. So that's a short term, as long as our funds last, but it would be helpful for all of us to looking at our budget ongoing, once we don't have the ARPA money, there may be some things that we can do if are eligible, and it may actually ease budgetary concerns of member entities to be able to basically backstop their UPD costs with some ARPA.
That helps, we'll put it in the budget, and I'll decide how to pay for it.
I just think that's easier than going in for a separate ask that may or may not be inside the process or the window of how people are reviewing ARPA, eligibility and ARPA, use of ARPA funds. I think it's different in every community, how it's being managed. So that was my thought. If everyone's in agreement with that.
To clarify, are we on for the
No, I think all three should be proposed as part of the next year's budget, and then we'll go back to that. Some of them are more, I believe the mental health one, because of state statute, is an ongoing request. It's not a one-year request or a three-year request. And absolutely, we would encourage the administration to be looking for grants and other things to supplement that funding. But knowing it's a requirement, I think that's something that we need to build into our baseline budget.
I agree, because we'll have to face that, otherwise it'll be an increase.
Mayor Flynn?
I personally know that our community probably would love to contribute to the mobile command center, since it is a one-time cost. Anything that requires continuing budgeting should be budgeted for an increase within our own budget. I understand the needs, but there's too many things that depend on grants, and when they go away, we leave them. So we're really not doing the program justice. If there's a way to purchase that extra into insurance, or if this is training for our police officers in managing crises when they go out, that's one thing, that also ought to be budgeted. And if it's a mental health thing that fits into our coverages for medical, I think that's important to maybe step that up a bit, instead of just, you can't rely on people's emotions to fund it piecemeal. It has to be continuing effort to understand their needs. Even though it's not a lot, we could do it, but I have concerns on the ongoing effects on our budgets, just like David.
I'd agree with that you want to make sure that, and I think what Councilman is alluding to is we need to slip in amount into the budget that is appropriate to the need ongoing. So I agree with that, but I have more of a technical question as it relates to the mobile command center. So are we basically trying to gain consensus from the board that we're going to use ARPA funds, and because I know when I talked to Mayor Hales, Mayor Steve, so I mean to put you on the spot, but my understanding was that their ARPA funds were already totally committed for water systems, and so if they don't have, and some of us have plenty of ARPA capacity, so for me it's not an issue, but if purchasing this is predicated on everybody using some ARPA funds, I mean, do you even have ARPA funds available for that?
I would need to check my staff, but I'm all committed.
Yeah. That was kind of my understanding, and so I guess I just have a question about that. If we can't get everybody on the board to say, yeah, this is great, does it still move forward, or does it require a full consensus of every member to commit ARPA funds to the purchase?
I really think, yeah, it would be up to the member whether they use ARPA funds or not.
But what if they don't have ARPA funds to use and they don't have money in their budget? Okay, so
The other thing,
$85,000 per Middledale.
the state is committed $200 million of on a grant basis to municipalities to do with water. So you may have some flexibility.
I'm happy to check with my staff.
Yeah, yeah.
And see.
But again, Mayor Daly, I think if it's proposed as part of the budget, we make a decision holistically as a group on what moves forward in the budget and what doesn't. And we have to go back to our respective councils for those approvals. How we fund these requests, I think, is up to each individual group based on what capacity you may or may not have as it relates to ARPA or general fund or other. And we may need to come back and say, this is something we can't fund, or this is something
So
we
it's
want to
not
move forward in the
really-
budget. I think it's a budget deliberation that we need to have.
Okay.
That's my 2 cents.
Oh.
Mayor Flynn?
There's another issue that's crept into all of our plans for ARPA money, and that was the legislature. There were a set of bills that were dealt with land use, 305, 362, I believe, and 374. They set up these interesting dynamics and mandates for each of our communities to amend our general plans. I think, Jeff, you're very familiar with that. But also, a last-minute amendment into one of those bills said that they would, everybody's hanging their hat on creating authorities. And if you don't create these authorities in your communities, you're not going to be maybe eligible to have your ARPA funds in the future. The dynamics of, in the beginning, yes, they said water projects, all of a sudden that is morphing into something else. They want to set up transportation corridor, affordable housing authorities so that they can apply for transportation funds from the feds and grants. And if we don't set up those authorities, we lose that ability to get grants and funds if we don't follow that mandate. Because the legislature is so developer-driven right now, we don't even know if we're going to have free rein to use our ARPA monies. We don't spend them quickly. Let's put it that way. I have half of it in the bank now. And I could say for us, yeah, the mobile command center is something that's doable because our portion isn't that much. But I can't guarantee that the second tranche that comes in this summer for us, whether I'm going to even have access to it because the legislature has put all these other layers that want a piece of that money. We're in trouble with too many people wanting that fund.
The state isn't regulating the ARPA money. The state is not regulating and doesn't have the ability to regulate
Yeah, but they're forcing.
the ARPA money that municipalities get from the federal government. The state is regulating the ARPA money that the state receives and regulating how it distributes that. So what all the affordable housing things really say is that if you want state ARPA money, additional ARPA money, then you're going to have to do reporting that's required for affordable housing.
But that came to each municipality, for some of us, wasn't that much.
In Sullivan County, we don't get our ARPA money through the state. In rural communities, they get their ARPA money through the state, but we don't in Sullivan County.
Yeah, the sad thing is everybody wants a piece of it, and I'd rather give it here than all those other things. So, me, I'm for the ideas and concepts. If it's a budget thing that needs to continue to be paid for, then we need to budget it.
Budget request.
How many you were waving at me, so I'm sorry. Okay. I see her hand raised now. I apologize.
Yes,
Please.
thank you. I just wanted to say that I am in agreement with what you said, Erin, and some of the others. I support all three, whether it comes out of ARPA funds or within our budget, either way. I did have one individual question, but I'm sure Lisa can probably verify that for me, maybe on a one-by-one, but we gave all of our, Brighton, the town of Brighton, our ARPA funds is very, very, very small, but we gave it all to both UPD and UFA. So I'm just wondering if that's going to match the requirement that I saw in our packet coming from Brighton now and then future ARPA funding.
Nothing. Councilmember Kegley, I'm not aware of seeing any money coming
in that form to UPD from Brighton. So maybe we can discuss that more when we meet individually, and I can look into that.
Great, great. Yeah, in fact, when at the 101 meeting, I have both our Councilman Keith Sussman, who does most of our financials, and then also our administrator, Nate Rockwell. And so they would be able to work with you. I know since we're a new town, there was a couple of places that we had given money and we found out that that money hadn't been distributed. So I want to make sure that, yeah, this is all taken care of. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I know law enforcement generally is an allowable use for ARPA, so it's possible they just paid their standard,
Yeah,
right, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Another clarifying question, the crossing guard, and here it's written, it's just going to the building, so.
Well, we can request it as a one-time in the budget. The whole goal was a one-time just to help us get through this time frame where it's so hard to hire a crossing guard. And, you know, with all the job market, there's plenty of places they can go right now. So it was more of an incentive to keep them, let them know how much we appreciate them. But we don't know what the future will bring, so we may come back in a year and say, we need to do this again.
A lot of that would be, that this is their duties during.
We've done some incentives for the employees throughout COVID. Were they included in that, in any of those?
So,
No.
no.
Thank you.
I have
I think we have a
Aaron, Speaker Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just wondering if Dave Olson and Harry, are you having a hard time hearing some of the councilmen that are in present? Yeah, okay. So Jeff will break out some of his voices, and then some voices are really low to hear. And I think it's the ones that are on the L shape, Bradley is really, I can barely hear him. Dave,
Yeah.
how about you?
It's cutting out. That's the concern I have, is somebody will start speaking, you don't hear anything, and then it jumps back in mid-sentence.
Yeah, thank you.
I think everyone from Procopus to Dali is pretty clear, but beyond that, it fades away. It's really difficult.
Okay, I think we'll work on passing our microphones around when someone is speaking to try to correct that. That would be helpful. Okay, thank you. Thank you for making us aware. All right. Any other closing comments related to that item? And I think we have a path forward through the standard budget process. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 5, Benefits and Compensation Committee meeting update.
Probably need to move the mic, because I think that was your.
I don't have any presentation.
Did they meet?
You did. Do you want to?
Can you comment on they did meet. Were you there when they met? Please want to comment.
Yeah, the committee did meet. The agenda was longer than the time allowed. And so really what the meeting was spent on was, first of all, a first introduction meeting with our new benefit broker, which is GBS, introduced, themselves, in a more in-depth manner to the board. They also presented our increases for health insurance and different benefits that they work on our behalf for. As far as the health insurance goes, PEHP originally came in with like an 11 to 12% increase. GBS asked them to go back, sharpen their pencils, take a better look. We were able to come down to a 6.8%, I believe is what it is. increase in the health insurance. Some of the other insurances are much smaller in magnitude when you think of them overall to the budget. Health insurance, of course, is the largest one. So getting that number early in the budget process is very helpful if we can work that into our wage and benefit budget lines. Trying to think if there was anything else that was specific. Oh, yes, they did talk about, for the past 3 years, I believe, we've had either 0% increase. 1 year we actually had a 1% decrease. And so, a combination of a few things, but including the fact that our prior year, there was less utilization of our health insurance, and then in this current year, an increase that may be related to COVID, people not going to the doctor, holding off on elective surgeries, things like that until, the COVID situation seemed to improve. That was one piece of what might be, leading to that kind of a remarkable decrease in usage last year. It followed by an up this year. So really all we had time to do in the committee meeting this particular time was to talk about the insurance with I can't remember. I think there was a doodle poll sent out. There was. So we'll be huddling up again next week then to talk about really the market, COLAs, things like that.
Another contributing factor to the proposed increase is inflation. That was discussed rather significantly, as well as increased utilization, and an evaluation of our top 10 utilizers. So I think it was a good conversation, but like you said, we only had time to get through agenda item number 1.
And one of the choices that we are faced with, that they felt they could go back to PAHP on the health insurance and maybe even negotiate them down further to maybe a 5% increase. But the consequence of that would be likely a double-digit increase next year. And so that's obviously a decision that we will need to make when we get to, finance and the budget. And then some of us expressed opinions about that. So.
Got a question. Has there been any conversation about what compensation?
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, that again was part of the agenda that was will be dealt with next week because we ran short of time.
So I don't know if the doodle poll went to everybody on the board, or it's just that the compensate benefit comp committee. But if anybody's interested in that, we should at least extend that invitation for people to. I don't know if that's a noticed meeting or not, if we have a quorum, but I think that is something. That is basically the nut of the budget, right? I mean, what happens with our fiscal year budget this coming year is going to highly depend upon what we do related to compensation. And there was some information disseminated in advance of the meeting to the members of the committee, at least, that show that UPD compensation for officers, sergeants, lieutenants has, with this constant reshuffling of compensation, we're kind of like in the number 6 position regarding officer compensation and sergeant compensation, and I think maybe is it 5 for lieutenants?
Yeah, I can't remember.
I can't remember that, but I think it's maybe a little bit better. But anyway, that's what we will be talking about next week when we meet again, and probably trying to come up with some kind of recommendation there. So that will be a valuable meeting for people to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Harmony, did you send it out to the whole board or just the committee, the doodle poll?
I'll read out with sending out that poll, but I think she sent it out to the committee. And check to make sure that.
And then we would have to notice that if we know the forum is going to be there.
Could I just add one more? Another important aspect of the wage and benefit budget for the upcoming year would be considering a COLA with the CPI the way that it is. And so I know that will be a discussion on that meeting as well.
Yeah, and that's going to be tough just given how much the CPI has changed. And then the other thing that is an element of that is that, you know, just in terms of discussions, informal discussions like among city managers and that, you know, a number of municipalities are looking at, you know, a rather significant cost of living increase in the range of around 7%, plus some smaller merit. So that's something we're going to have to address as a department because municipal employees generally, I think, are going to be seeing that kind of cost of living increase. See what happens when we come through the budget process, but at least those are the discussions that I'm aware of that are occurring right now around our county.
Yeah, I think that's the issue, period. I mean, there's some market stuff too that's going on, but I think everybody is curious and asking, I know I am, what other, you know, what the county's going to do, what other municipalities are going to do, because when you're talking about 7% COLAs, it has massive impacts to budgets, and then you've also got just inflationary costs in general within the budget, whether it be fuel or other things. But now all of a sudden, all employees are going to be part of this.
Yeah, and fuel, asphalt, there's all kinds of things.
It's going to be a brutal budget season because there's no way you're going to avoid going out for massive tax increases unless you're planning on slashing your budget. I mean, it just is.
Well, and, you know, the other thing that we all have to be mindful of, I think, is that our taxpayers, our residents are also facing these same inflationary pressures in their own budgets. So that to slap them with a handsome tax increase is not going to be appreciated.
Yeah. And I don't think we're going to be unique in seeing cost increases to health insurance, as meaning the UPD board. So I think that's going to be across the board as well.
Yeah, it's going to be. I'm afraid we might get into a situation like we did with the police during the regular, you know, post-budget season, but within the budget season where everybody is trying to figure out where everybody else is going to be. I don't know, it'll be interesting to see how people deal with this cost of living issue.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a challenging budget season.
It's going to be super challenging.
Yeah. Not only for this agency, but for every individual municipality. Note. We'll move on to an update from the Budget and Finance Committee.
Yes, the Financial Committee met on Tuesday, March the 8th. And, you know, when I report on what we do, it's almost like a repeat of what we're going to do at UPD budget or UPD General Board meeting. So one of the things that we did is we discussed had a presentation on the quarterly 2022 budget amendments by Lisa, and that is on our today's item number 7, so I won't go into that. And then also we had a presentation from Lisa again on the fiscal year 2022 to 2023 budget process update, and that is in today's item number 8, so I won't go into that. And then we also had an item where we had a presentation by our sheriff on individual member board meetings and the UPD 101, and most of that is going to be on today's meeting on item number 10, and I'm sure that will include the one-on-one that has already been mentioned. So that's pretty much what we discussed.
Thank you, Director Keegley. Lisa, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Go, thank you.
Perfect. We'll move on to agenda item number 7 with our proposed budget amendments. Lisa, we'll turn the time to you.
Okay, thank you. And Harmony, do you have those to pull up or not? As was presented to the committee, you know, here we are in March with 9 months of our fiscal year already passed. As we approach the end of the year, most of the budget amendments are line item adjustments between departments, which I've always felt is a very good thing, as our commanders and those with budgetary responsibility are watching their budgets and reviewing, and rather than needing to ask for additional money, are able to move, rearrange their priorities and what they had in mind to cover other things that came up, or cost increases or what have you, through their operational parts of the budget. Thank you. I see it. All right. So, in the general fund, the fiscal impact of these budget amendments, that's the second page right there, is all of $10. And that was a contribution from a very kind and concerned individual who sent a donation in. Otherwise, you can see through the expenditure line, it's just moving reclasses between departments. And so, so that's the general fund. When we get into the special revenue funds, the precinct funds, again, most of what we have is either a reclass between departments, or we've, next page, or we have received donations, some of which have been previously approved by the board, and I think we do have one for today that is included in this budget amendment. Other than, if you look carefully, can you scroll, see where it says Mid-Vale at the bottom? This transaction also affects the fleet fund. Mid-Vale's budget for this fiscal year included a second drop car that into the budget we had built the transfer to Fund 50 for a full year. They did not receive that car until December, and so rather than moving $1,000 extra into the fleet fund, we've left that with Mid-Vale. So if you scroll to the next page, you'll see then the transaction as it trickles through to the fleet fund as well. And then in Fund 72, which is the county-wide services, again, we have, this was a donation received last year, a grant that came from the county for graffiti enforcement. This particular new money last year was not utilized until the current year, and so it rolled to last year's fund balance. And so this is just bringing that money in so that Canyon Patrol can do graffiti enforcement for the remainder of this year. And besides that, you'll just see moves again within Fund 72 to cover various items. Any questions on this?
So, Chair, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing on the budget amendment.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Lisa, will you take a roll call, please?
Director Bradley? Director Brennan?
Aye.
Director Dolly?
Aye.
Director Flint?
Aye.
Director Keighley?
Aye.
Director Litvack? Aye. Director Olson?
Aye.
Director Peterson?
Aye.
Director Prokopis?
Aye.
Director Silvestri?
Aye.
Director Stevenson?
Aye.
Great. Is there anyone here to make public comment related to our budget amendment? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. We are back to the agenda. With that, I'll accept a motion to approve the budget amendment.
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 220301 of 2023 approving budget amendments.
Director Capote? Thank you. Director Bradley? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 8 with a 2023 budget update from Sheriff Rivera and Lisa. Thank you.
Okay, we're just going to have Lisa talk on this. I kind of already did with my update, regular update, so.
Okay, as we move forward with the budget amendment, this also, or the update on next year's budget, the operational budgets are in and looking good. The commanders have been, and those with budgetary responsibility, I always try to remember that we have a couple departments where it's not necessarily the commander who is solely involved in the budget. They've been great to work with. We are waiting, of course, for the compensation discussion that will be had next week. There still are also a couple of items that we have to wait for, like our renewals for certain softwares and what have you. Some of those are quite large, but as soon as those are known, we'll get those into the budget as well. Otherwise, I think we're just hanging on to the discussion on wages and benefits in order to complete that.
And we do have a couple of positions that we are going to request as well, and I can give you the heads up on those two. One is when we created when the HR director left and we created the HR director position with the chief, we made some cuts in the training area, and we really feel like we might have cut too much, so we're going to request a position in training to help with the training. And then also on the mental health unit, it currently is funded through Salt Lake County, but we want to request one that UPD pays for, so it makes it fair. Salt Lake County funds the mental health unit, and they go out and they work with other agencies as well, not just strictly UPD, but we need to balance that piece out. We have asked the chiefs to assign secondaries to help with that caseload. That's not working as well as we had planned, so we're going to request a person to help manage those caseloads, and we're still reaching out to the chiefs to, help us get that program working well. We know it's very effective, and it does reduce the patrol caseload when you're dealing with call and same person who has some mental health issues, and we're in the precincts that are supporting the program. It's working very well, and it's helping reduce those calls. So, but that will be a position that we'll ask for a detective for that unit. And those, I believe,
yeah, and I'm aware that we may be adding an officer in that area as well, just specifically.
So, and I just want to add that our meetings that will be forthcoming, the one-on-one next week, and then the individual member meetings, those are also part of our budget process, as it will help, the board and those in your communities who you've invited to understand UPD's budget, ask questions and become more familiar with the various divisions of funding for each division. So we're hoping that's well received by all the communities.
How many RSVPs do you have in training?
About 60 on.
Lisa, can you remind us the date of when the proposed budget will be presented?
Yeah, the tentative budget will come to the board, the May meeting with approval at the June meeting. But like last year, we'll have those numbers out, to our members, in advance.
Like we spoke about earlier, I would like an invite to the watch, the sooner, what that increase might be. I don't know if that's a quorum problem.
I think that having as many board members present for that discussion as we can get will be productive.
Agreed.
So that because that committee will make a recommendation to the board on compensation, and I'd rather have that be, reasonably solid. It helps the department build a budget. It also helps all of our municipalities build a budget as well, to know what we might be expecting there. And I'm hoping that we can I don't know, it's tough for you to anticipate what certain increases might look like in terms of budgetary effect to each of us on our contracts. But that would be super helpful in terms of making those kinds of decisions.
Yeah, and we do have a tool, a model.
You have the spreadsheet we used last year.
Yeah, we just will reuse that same.
It's all coming fast now.
A great tool in helping us kind of make decisions as well as we move through it.
I don't remember it. Do you? Yeah, well, on cost of living.
No,
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I think the UFA, similar organization, they're looking at 7%, COLA. I is indicating 8.6. Overall, I believe it's anywhere from 7 to 9. Is it 9?
Significant.
That's with trimming back a lot of capital stuff to the bare minimum. And I remember on the health insurance,
3%. What we got this year?
Yeah, the
Really
health insurance there was reasonably,
but that's the initial proposal. I don't know if it's just huge numbers when you start talking 9-10% member fee.
Right. That's one of the two biggest expenses for municipalities, fire and police, so,
It's half of our budget.
yeah. As we spoke to earlier, it's gonna be.
Well, I think the other thing there too, and I'm not to drag this out, but I mean, obviously, that is with UFA. We've worked UFA into a really solid market position, so our markets are really low. I don't think we're going to enjoy that same benefit with police. Even with the changes we made, the adjustments we made in October, November. So we're gonna have more challenging market issues too, so you're gonna have both the market and COLA issues to wrestle with, and it's just.
we already know that based upon the spreadsheet that was circulated for the benefits and comp committee. We didn't get a chance to talk about it, but it's there in black and white.
Yep.
Significant.
Or orange and yellow and stuff.
thank you.
All right, thank you, Lisa. We'll move on to agenda number 9, acceptance of donations. Chief Madron?
Madam Chair, just a quick donation for you and the board members from Stephen Washburn for $495 out of Holiday, which I think he is the owner of the Great Harvest up there or employee there, and provided lunch for all the officers in the Holiday precinct. A very nice donation.
Thank you.
Make a motion to accept the donation.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to agenda item number 10, looking at our future meetings. I think we've discussed already today that we have our UPD Board 101 retreat this coming Monday from 10 to 1 here in this space. Hope to see as many of you there as we can. And the other meeting that's not noted on the agenda currently that we've discussed today as well is we're setting up an additional benefits and compensation committee. We'll make sure everyone receives an invite to that, knowing the difficulty of the discussion around compensation that we'll be addressing. Any other committees that are meeting that were not noticed on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 11, which is approval of our February 17th minutes.
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All right, a motion by Director Bradley, a second by Director Silvestrini. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Any other business from the board?
Just a reminder, those who are members of CISA will have a very quick and short meeting.
Wonderful. Thank you, Director Bradley.
To adjourn.
Thank you, sir. All right, without abstention, thank you.